Hello, thanks for joining us for this webinar on how asset tracking captures more value in your heavy equipment rentals and leasing. This is hosted by Link Labs and presented by Glenn Schatz. A couple housekeeping items as we get started. If you'd like to ask questions, you can use the questions or the chat feature, and we'll respond to those at the end of the webinar. We are recording today and we'll follow up in the next couple days. You'll also receive a brief survey following this webinar. Please complete that and let us know how we did. We're pleased to have Glenn Schatz presenting today. Glenn is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Link Labs, a leading provider of an end-to-end IoT platform for locating and monitoring equipment, supplies, and assets anywhere at any time. An expert in low-power wireless networks, cellular IoT, and asset tracking, Glenn plays a critical role in Link Labs' product strategy, new business initiatives, channel sales, and strategic partnerships. Before Link Labs, Glenn worked at the U.S. Department of Energy, where he started and led agency initiatives to empower small commercial buildings to cut energy use by leveraging technology and best practices from industry leaders and national laboratories. Earlier, he co-founded Energy Conversion Research Ventures, a provider of engineering consulting and project development services that specializes in clean technology development and renewable energy solutions. Glenn also previously worked as an adjunct professor at the U.S. Naval Academy, where he personally developed and taught a senior-level elective on energy policy and security, in addition to teaching the introductory government course taken by all midshipmen. Glenn received his master's degree in national security policy from Georgetown University and his bachelor's degree from the United States Naval Academy. In his free time, he works with a veterans nonprofit organization that advocates for civic engagement, media accountability, and responsible leadership. Glenn resides in Baltimore with his spouse and 2 children. Glenn, welcome and thanks for presenting today.
Thanks for the very warm introduction, Jennifer. I'm happy to join all of you today. We have a great turnout, so I'm excited about that. Just to kind of level set for the next hour or so, I'm going to go through very briefly about Link Labs and the history of Link Labs and why we are what we are today. Kind of some discussion around what is asset tracking, how is that done today, what are some best practices, a little bit deeper dive into what GPS is and what it isn't. A discussion of some use cases that are very applicable to the heavy equipment rental industry, a little bit of discussion on the AirFinder platform, which is one of the leading platforms for asset intelligence, locating and monitoring assets anywhere, as well as how the SuperTag itself works, which is the core device that we use for asset intelligence with our heavy equipment rentals. And then I'll have a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. If you have any questions, as Jennifer mentioned, please put those in the chat. So a little bit about Link Labs. As Jennifer mentioned, Link Labs provides the industry's most complete end-to-end IoT platform for locating and monitoring assets. And AirFinder is our flagship product, which helps customers across industries do indoor and outdoor location and monitoring. We have over 100,000 infrastructure devices deployed, and as you can see on the map on the right, we have a lot of fixed infrastructure installations all over the country, and we're expanding throughout North America as well, and then we have some global customers, although we haven't expanded too much globally just yet. We also have 22 patents, and we have a number of network operators globally that we can work with on connecting our devices. It's hard to do any of this stuff on our own, and so we rely on our partners to help us. Like I said, we have lots of great network partners. We also work with tag vendors and OEMs. We work with a number of chipset providers, everything from low power radio chips to cellular chips and everything in between. We work with device management partners and location partners and distribution partners, and the gist of this is that this is a hard, the Internet of Things often sounds easy, but it actually requires a lot of players, and we have a lot of friends in the business. As I mentioned, sometimes when you're doing an Internet of Things pilot, it's really easy to get a device to talk to the cloud and put a dot on a map or show a temperature reading from a device. But at scale, it starts to become really hard. And any successful Internet of Things deployment will always eventually get to a scale point, which is required really to bring the cost down. So we're able to be a journey partner, which I'll talk a little bit more later, but we also do a lot of the hard things for you so our customers don't have to. Things like 24/7 support, being proactive in monitoring your battery devices of all your devices in the field, being able to configure your devices over time to allow them to last longer or provide more intelligence based on your use case. And then, of course, the things that everyone takes for granted, but as you all know, because you're in an operations and logistics centered industry, things like getting devices to customer sites on time, being able to do forecasting and hit budgetary targets, being able to understand and estimate supply chain disruptions, account for them. Those are all things that we're able to take off your hands, which you wouldn't necessarily be able to do with just any provider. So some of you may be familiar with asset tracking, so I apologize if this is a little basic, but some of you may just be starting this journey, and you may be hearing from all different kinds of vendors offering you everything from, hey, here's an Excel spreadsheet that we've customized with some macros to be able to allow you to easily put barcodes in and track those as they move from place to place, to an ultra wideband or infrared solution that's very expensive and requires hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment on a site for them to work. And the way that we tend to look at asset tracking is that typically the cost of installation complexity give you more intelligence as you move up the cost curve. And so, as I mentioned, spreadsheets and barcodes are great for very basic processes. Your shipping department might be able to scan something on the way out as it's being packaged, and there are systems that exist for that, and those work well for lots of things. But you're sort of limited in what you can see there. So when it leaves your facility, but you don't really know when your customer receives it. You might get a shipping update from your shipper, but you don't actually know if it got there. You don't know if there were mistakes made in transit. And so you're basically stuck at understanding at specific choke points where your thing is. And the same is true for passive RFID. It's a little bit more sophisticated because it doesn't require that manual scan. But as your device passes through some sort of choke point that can read the passive RFID tag, it will then update typically an automated database or process software where it will tell you where that thing is, again, at any given moment in time, but you lose sight of it between those choke points. Active RFID is a little bit more sophisticated. It allows you near continuous insight into your asset, provided you actually have an active RFID system installed. So for warehouses, active RFID works well. For places where where your asset's going to be and the asset's typically not going to leave that area, active RFID works well. And then if you go up into the sort of most sophisticated leading edge stuff, it's ultra wideband. It's going to give you sub-meter accuracy. Think about things like tracking forklifts and being able to help navigate around a busy warehouse, or think about an autonomous Amazon warehouse that they're building that might reduce labor by using robotics. So you would need something that has that level of precision, but as I said, that's very, very expensive. At Link Labs, we try to take a holistic approach and give you just right accuracy for what you need to do. And so what that basically boils down to is we're giving you the accuracy of active RFID, and in some cases even of some ultra wideband systems, but at a fraction of the cost. And that's for indoors. And then when you get outdoors, we are one of the only companies that offers seamless indoor-outdoor tracking. So in most of these cases that I've listed here, once it leaves your four walls, you've basically lost it until it's at another choke point. With the super tag, which we'll go through today, it allows you to see where an asset is in near real time, just about anywhere. We like to draw a bubble around where we fit. Typically, you're not going to tag a hand tool with one of our tags, although there may be some cases where it's a key tool for your process where you might want to track it. And if you're going to track a Tesla or a tractor trailer, there are probably existing products on the market that work well for you. But for us, we try to focus on everything in between. So people, processes, and products. Things where you are cost sensitive around how much you're willing to pay for the asset tracking technology, but also for items that you do need a more pervasive knowledge of where they are. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about what GPS is and what it isn't. So GPS refers to a very specific technology. It's a set of satellites that the US government deployed that allows you to essentially triangulate the signal from a constellation of satellites to give you around 5 to 10 meter accuracy just about everywhere. GPS is a phenomenal technology. It's used in just about everything you have, from your iPhone to your tablet to your smartwatch. That being said, GPS does have some limitations, and I want to be sure that I talk through those limitations because some of the things that we're going to talk about today are giving you location, but they're not using GPS. So GPS, because it's a satellite constellation, doesn't work well in some very specific use cases, especially indoors. So if you're, in an area where you either have a metal roof or there's a lot of metal and the RF signal can't get through it, GPS isn't going to work well. So you'll notice that if you have a GPS device, it may work well near the edge of your house, but once you go to the middle, it doesn't work. Or it may work on the second floor of the house, but not the first floor, and definitely not in the basement. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is in challenging RF environments. So you'll see that oftentimes when you're in cities with high-rise buildings and you can't get a direct path signal to the satellites, your GPS will be very inaccurate if you even get a return at all. And then in applications that may be more applicable to this use case, things with a heavy tree canopy, areas where there are canyons and things like that, GPS can also potentially not work very well. And then the most applicable to this use case is battery-powered devices. So if you ever have used a pet tracker or a kid tracker that had GPS in it, you probably have to recharge it, once a week. For your Apple Watch or your Garmin, if you have a GPS and a cellular connection in it, you probably have to charge that daily. And so that doesn't work for most of the use cases we're talking about, where your customer is going to have your equipment for months potentially, and you want to make sure that you have the ability to know where it is throughout that entire period. So GPS is great, but it doesn't work for everything, and I'll talk a little bit later about the technologies that enable you to know where things are without using the GPS constellation. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about a typical device or typical product and how it moves through a supply chain or a value chain. Not all of this will be applicable to the rental use case, but it is important to see all the different steps in the process that other customers use, just in case it piques some curiosity or interest, or even allows you to understand some use cases that your customers might have to what they're using the rental equipment for that may help you provide value to them. So typically a product will start at a manufacturing facility or OEM. It will be transported to a distribution center. From the distribution center, it may go to a 3PL. It may go to a last mile or less than truckload carrier. At that point, it will go to a reseller, in which case it may go back over the road to an end customer facility or site. And then at a certain point, there may be some field services involved where someone goes to the site to refurbish it. In some cases, it might go back to the customer facility, and then in some cases, there may be some other third-party collateral verification involved. And so, as you can see, having something that works throughout this entire value chain is essential for some products, especially if your last knowledge right now of where something might be when it leaves your factory. And so for the rental equipment use case, you could think about somewhere between the distribution center and the customer facility as the key areas. And so right now, if you're not using any asset tracking, you probably know when it leaves your facility or your distributor's facility. You may know when your customer gets it because the customer won't have complained to you, and you may already have a date where they're supposed to get their rental. Or if it's your driver that's doing the delivery, they may be able to provide that input back to you. But in between your facility or the distribution center and the customer site, you may not have any knowledge of where that device is. And then if for some reason it left your customer facility, you'd likely have no knowledge of that. And I'll get into some of the problems with that in a bit. So I'll talk a little bit about a few use cases that are applicable for heavy equipment. And I'll try to show you how we can help with those particular use cases. The 4 that I'm going to cover today, and there are likely more of them, but the 4 that I'll cover today are loss prevention, improving downtime, more visibility, and equipment utilization. And there is some overlap between all of these, but there are some specific things that I do want to cover. So loss prevention is by far the most straightforward use case to understand. It's, there are millions, if not billions of dollars worth of lost and stolen equipment every year. And this is a problem that I'm sure that you all understand and have, and in some cases have quantified. And it's often difficult to know where everything is, especially in a dynamic environment where your stuff is supposed to be moving around all the time. And so, while this is a very generic view and one that you may not be using every day, one of your operations managers, when they get to the office, may be able to look and say, hey, we don't have any customers in South Dakota, so what is our thing doing in South Dakota? And then you can drill down on that. If you needed to do an inventory and you said, for example, I would expect 70 devices in my, or 70 pieces of equipment in my Blacksburg facility, but I only see 61. That would be another example of this. Like I said, the map use or the map view isn't something that all of our customers typically use every day, but it does provide some insight at a managerial level. There are some other ways that we can work with loss prevention. So you can see when specific devices have left a customer site. You could see when things have been at a customer site for a long time. So while that's also helpful with some of the other use cases that we are going to talk about, it's a really good way of having a summary view of, hey, here's where a bunch of things are. Oh, and by the way, I know of a device or an asset that left this site a couple days ago, and we haven't seen it yet. And typically the turnaround time is 24 hours. And so you could know within a day if something is wrong, and then hopefully you still have some insight into where it is, and you can drill down in it before it happens to, disappear off the map, or someone is able to figure out a way to remove the tracking device off of it. In a lot of cases, there's actually nothing malicious. It could just be that some customer thought they were returning it to one of your sites and they may have returned it to another site, and it may not have been checked in correctly. And so the customer didn't do anything wrong. You still have it, but you may not know where it is or be able to locate it. Another use case that we found to be very important to the rental equipment industry specifically is having less downtime. So clearly, if a device is not in your customer's hands and it's not in your hands undergoing maintenance, it's basically losing money because the value of it's going down over time and you're not putting it to work. And so by having some more insight into when you expect devices to be returned or assets to be returned, how long they've been in a refurbishment facility, how long your customers had them compared to what their lease arrangement is. All of these things are useful for heavy equipment rental companies to understand how to most efficiently utilize your equipment. And it's not to say that your stuff is going to be in the field 100% of the time. Obviously, there's preventive maintenance. It needs to come back to your depot or your warehouse or your distribution center. But having some of this knowledge will allow you to make better decisions about future investments, about whether or not you can try to squeeze more run hours out of a specific asset, whether or not it's worth doing the preventive maintenance on an asset if it's not being used and put back in the field repeatedly. More visibility is a kind of a generic term we use, but is useful and mostly for in transit, both to and from your customer site, as well as in some cases, if your customer is renting a piece of equipment, but you actually don't know where it's going, it maybe gives you a little bit more insight into that customer and what may be helpful for them. So, for example, if your customer is picking up the equipment from your facility, and it's typically a local pickup, used within 50 miles, but that the Bobcat ends up going 400 miles away, that may allow you to ask your customer, hey, was there no facility closer that you go to? Was there a change of plans? Was this a specific piece of equipment that you couldn't find anywhere else? Were you just not planning well? Those sort of things. And so, in the future, you may be able to help that customer by saying, oh, we have a partner or another reseller that's based in Asheville, so you don't need to drive it all the way from Pittsburgh down to Asheville. Or you may be able to know that, hey, this is a really valuable piece of equipment that no one else has, and someone's willing to drive 500 miles for it. Maybe I should charge more for that piece of equipment. So it just gives you a little bit of insight that you don't currently have if you're not tracking your device beyond when it leaves your facility, or your customer's address. I talked about less downtime before, but equipment utilization is also a related but important characteristic to look at. And so the reason equipment utilization is important is it can give you both some insight into whether or not your preventative maintenance is based on utilization or a time schedule. So a lot of times you'll have an MRC that's due quarterly, and you need to perform that maintenance procedure quarterly. But really, it's based on X number of run hours or number of cycles of machine, or Y number of users. So this allows you to have a little bit more granularity, and you may be able to adjust your maintenance schedules based on this. Additionally, you may have some insight of, hey, I have someone in the vicinity of one of these machines. The customer has the rental for another 2 months, but rather than having them perform the maintenance at the depot, we can perform it at a customer site, potentially move it directly from a customer site to another customer, and minimize downtime there. Additionally, it allows you to know whether your customers are getting value out of your equipment. And so if you have a scissor lift and it's being used 3 times a day, and a customer has 10 scissor lifts at a large construction site, and each one of those scissor lifts is only being used 3 times a day, in the short run, telling your customer, hey, you probably don't need 10 scissor lifts that are only being used a couple times a day, because that will decrease the number of items they rent. But I'll bet you that you would retain that customer, and your customer may come back to you for other equipment, and it's just a good customer service thing to do. So it's kind of a trade-off between short run and long run. This is just another way of looking at equipment utilization, the flow of equipment, where it's coming from, where it's going, how long it's been there, what it's doing. We can also get a little bit into some of the environmental conditions around it. So we do have an accelerometer on all of our tags, so we know when it moves. We have temperature and humidity sensors, so we know if there are any extreme temperatures that a tag is being exposed to, if it's not supposed to. So there are lots of things that we can do to tell you a little bit more about your tag than just where it is. This isn't as relevant for most heavy machinery use cases, but we do offer indoor positioning at a relatively granular level. This might be something that you would use if you do have a large repair facility, or you're also tracking specialty tools that you use for the repairs inside of the facility. So we're able to give you relatively granular location information about your device without using any GPS. And this also applies a bit in yard management. So if you do have a yard, and if if you need something that's a little bit more granular than some GPS, or you need to know specifically, when it leaves or enters specific choke points or areas, we can do that on yard management systems as well. And then, as you can see here, it's a relatively seamless indoor-outdoor transition between the view that you would be looking at as you're looking through your map view, all the way zoomed into your warehouse view or your repair facility view. So that's enough about the use cases. I'm sure you can think of dozens of more use cases. You're all the experts in your industry, and so we would welcome any feedback on things we missed, or ways that we can better serve your industry through either additional analytics, additional features on our device, reports, alerts, those sort of things. We build our entire system from end to end. So we have low-level control of the device all the way through control of the user interface in the cloud. So if our customers need additional features added, we can typically do that very quickly and allow you to see the value in those features very quickly. I'm going to spend a few minutes going through the SuperTag itself. As I mentioned, this is our core device that we use for indoor-outdoor tracking. It's a very sophisticated device. We have two flavors of it. One is a small device. It's about 2,000 milliamp hours, and we have another large device that's over 9,000 milliamp hours. Most of our customers who have things that are going to be in the field for a long time, if the device can fit the larger device, they'll do that, just because it gives them a little bit more amortization over time, of the cost of the system. But there are some cases where the small device serves purposes, can last a couple of years in the use case, and is enough, and it doesn't require you to have that beefier device. So they are relatively small. Even the big one is relatively small. It's about the size of a cell phone, maybe twice the thickness. And the small device is about the size of a deck of cards, but it's square, so 3 inches by 3 inches and under an inch thick. So you can see that comparison to a credit card. So these aren't tiny devices, but they're also not huge devices, and we typically can find ways to mount these devices on just about any asset. We've mounted assets on cranes and on front loaders and on Connex boxes and in plastic pallets and on glass racks. And so we have an industrial design team that we can work with. If the basic mounting solutions don't work for you, we can come up with other options. This is what I alluded to earlier in the webinar. When we talk about GPS, it is just a very specific piece of this technology pie. It's the satellite or constellation that drives GPS accuracy, and it is very accurate, but it's also very power hungry, and I'll get to that in a bit. We can also get accurate location directly from cell tower IDs. So if our device can see a cell tower, we can derive a position from that. Additionally, we use a technology called position over LTE, or POLTE, that is similar to GPS, but it uses a constellation of cell towers instead. So if we have multiple cell towers, we can actually use those towers to get a more accurate position. So somewhere between 100 and 500 feet. We can use Wi-Fi location lookup, and this is actually the system that a lot of your cell phones will use when it's not using GPS. It basically scans the area for Wi-Fi base station IDs, sends that to a central database, and there are several of them. Google maintains one, Mozilla maintains one. There are a number of proprietary companies that have databases as well. And typically, if you can get a Wi-Fi base station ID, you can get accuracy under 100 feet, which is really good for most use cases. Unless you have two customers that are right next door to each other, that's going to be enough accuracy for most rental equipment use cases. And you'll see in a second just how much that matters when it comes to battery life. And then for indoor positioning, we can actually do as much as 10 feet of accuracy with our beacon-based approach. The same would be true with our yard management approach if we use beacons. And the other thing about our indoor positioning system is it's much more energy efficient than any of these other technologies, significantly so. So it's a really, really good technology to use if you do have any indoor or yard management applications. And the nice thing about the Super Tag is it chooses what you need based on your use case. We can adjust that over time. We can adjust it dynamically and say, hey, when something is in transit, it needs to update at a 5-minute update rate using Wi-Fi, but when it's static, we want it to do GPS or vice versa. So there's lots of knobs we can turn to help both give you the accuracy you need for your use case at different points in the journey, as well as have a very long battery life. And so we've taken this just right approach that we use for our indoor positioning to our outdoor system as well. Fluid battery tuning is another feature that's really, really, really important. Typically with the IoT, we see the thing that is keeping devices from being tracked is cost. And one of the key drivers of cost is battery life. Every time you need to replace a battery, there's obviously a battery cost, which isn't that expensive, but it's the maintenance cost of pulling it off of a machine, interrupting your processes. For rental equipment, it may not be as big of a deal if you expect your things to come back every month or 2 or 3 months. But if you do have something that's a variable term rental and it's going to be out in the field for 6 months to a year, there are very few technologies that can offer you that battery life. And it's because in most cases they're using GPS. And so a weak GPS fix, which means the GPS is scanning for a few minutes and it fails, can be 20 times or more amount of battery than some of the other fixed types that we use. And so we typically caution our customers to only use GPS if they really need it, because we can optimize your battery life and give you the accuracy you need with most of these other technologies that we offer. Again, there are some cases where you really do need GPS. Typically when something is in transit, you'll have a clear line of sight to satellites, and so GPS might be a worthwhile exercise there. But really, GPS is a luxury that a lot of customers don't actually need. We have it if you do, but we encourage people not to use it. The other thing that's very important to consider when you're looking at IoT devices is the total cost of ownership. So a lot of companies, when they're in this pilot stage, especially if there's an innovation group or someone who's charged with adding some IoT services to your portfolio, you start to look at the specific costs of things, and you may forget some of them. So you may be researching, hey, how much does this device cost? But you're not counting on how much is the cell plan that's coming with it. You may not even know the questions to ask to be able to understand how much data the device is sending to be able to negotiate a cell plan. And it's not just the connectivity, because while most cell providers will give you a platform to manage the cellular connection, they won't give you a platform to manage the devices. So you either have to build or buy your own device management platform, as well as the APIs to control your devices. You have to be able to handle firmware over the air. There are some things that we don't even have here, like certification costs. If you have a new wireless device, carriers need to certify it, the FCC needs to certify it, PTCRB needs to certify it. So there's lots of these other different considerations that you don't really think about. Installation is another one too, where it could be something simple, where you can use double-faced tape to tape something underneath the chassis, and a lot of use cases that might be enough. In some cases, especially ones where a piece of equipment is going to be subject to the elements and subject to potential vibration, you may want something like a like a rack or a mounting bracket, and we can provide those sort of things too. But it's also important that you understand the cost of installation and servicing and removing the device and replacing the batteries, and then of course the replacement end of life. What do you do with dead batteries? How do you know your batteries are dead? These sort of things are really important and are baked into our system, so you don't really need to worry about that. We have alerts and reports. We're giving you, real-time insight into the status of all of your devices. And then the other thing that comes with the total cost of ownership is it's not just the cost of the battery, as I mentioned earlier, but it's the actual cost of getting and servicing the device that you're trying to replace. And if that's on a piece of rental equipment out in Midland, Texas, that might be a little bit harder than if it's something that comes back to your facility in town. One of the things that our customers most frequently talk about after they've had a successful launch with Link Labs is how we've been a journey partner with them along the way. We don't believe in gating or stovepiping information. We want to share as much with you as possible, even if what we share with you may force you down a different path through a different technology, or even, shrug your shoulders and say, you know what, it's just not worth it to track this type of device or this piece of equipment because we just can't get an ROI for it. We would much rather discover that in the proof of concept phase or even on initial discovery calls than after working with you for 6 months or a year, where you may have deployed 100 devices or 200 devices or even 1,000 devices, but the economics just don't work. And at the end of the day, we don't make it money and you don't make money unless you actually get to a scale production. So we're looking for ways to improve that story from the very, very beginning. So we like to start small. We like to do a technical proof of concept if required, just to make sure it works. We can mount it. We have some ideas for your use case. Typically, the next step is to do a business case validation where, what is the minimum number of things that we need to track to be able to show we're returning some sort of investment for whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So if your anchor use case is loss prevention, and you estimate you're losing 5% of your equipment every year, what number of things do you need to put a tracker on to actually figure out if that's true? Or are there specific customers that are the biggest problems? And then at that point, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes we can just move from the validation of the business case to a scaled rollout, but typically there's a feature or two that we don't have baked into our system, or there's some new view that isn't in our UI that you may want to see that will help your managers understand where your assets are or what they're doing. So we would work with you at that point to refine both the business case as well as our application to be able to give you what you need to solve your problem. And then at the end of the day, what we're all aiming for is for this to be scaled across your entire fleet, or all of the things that you're trying to track, and to be a journey partner with you for the life of those devices. And in a lot of cases, that's 5+ years. So it's it's very important for us to be with you along the whole way and to provide value to you from day one. The other thing that we can provide is remote support. We have access to all of our devices. We're easy to find. We have a support portal. We have some customers that have more direct ties into us through through Slack or other means. We have APIs, so if you want us to tie into your ERP system, into other systems that you already have, even as something as simple as you want us to automate a spreadsheet that goes to your field service manager every morning, those are things that we can do. We also have a robust field services team, unlike a lot of GPS tracking companies, because we deal with lots and lots of on-site things with our indoor asset tracking system. We have site survey people, we have field service techs and reps that can go out to your site, help you do the installation, help you understand the use case, answer questions about mounting, and provide experience from all the different use cases that we see. And then we of course have professional services that we offer. If your use case is truly custom, something that we don't offer, we do everything from designing custom devices to designing custom applications to people. it's not necessarily our preferred method of business. We like to build things that all of our customers need into our product, but we do offer that. And so if you really are a special butterfly and have something that only works for you, we can provide that for you as well. And one of the things that I wanted to leave you with at the end of this webinar is the best way for you to understand whether the super tag and AirFinder is going to work for you is to try it. And we've tried to provide a relatively inexpensive way to do that will show most of the features of our super tag off, everything from the GPS Wi-Fi cell ID to the indoor location or the yard management location system with location beacons. We also provide web access and connectivity, our device management platform, as well as a few professional service hours to get you up and running with this. And so, please, if you're interested in this, you can be up and running very quickly, and please contact us for a discount code, and we'll provide that for you so you can get started. Jennifer, that concludes the presentation. Thank you all for attending. We do have a few minutes for questions, and so I'll open it up to the floor for any questions.
Thanks. Glenn, we've had a couple questions come in around how long do the tags last?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I know people hate hearing it depends, but it depends. A typical tag use case for us is a device might check in 1 or 2 times a day. In a case like that, our smaller super tag, the Super Tag Pro, will last about 2 years, and the Super Tag Plus will last over 6 years. So there's a big variance there. If you're trying to check in with GPS once every 10 minutes, when it's in motion, it may only last a couple months. And there are some use cases where that may make sense. But like I said earlier, we have a lot of knobs we can turn, and we typically tease a lot of these things out in the pilot stage. And so we're working with you to refine battery life for your specific use case during the pilot. So we can go back to you and say, hey, during the pilot, you had a 2-hour update, but when did you really need that 2-hour update? Was it when the tag was in transit? Was it when it was not in motion? Did you really, is a 4-hour update enough for you because the closest 2 facilities your customers have are 4 hours apart? Those sort of things. And so, we'll work with you. And this is a continuously evolving question. We have some stuff built into the tag that allows it to self-correct if you tell us you need a tag to last 2 years no matter what. You can put whatever settings you want on it. When the tag realizes it's going to die, it will then change those settings to last 2 years. Or you may say, you know what, I don't care how long the tag lasts, but I really needed to check in once an hour when it's in transit, and I can live with a little bit of variation in battery life. So we'll work with you on that during the pilot stage, but we think that for this type of device, we offer the best battery life in terms of performance as anything on the market.
So you mentioned a pilot. What are some of those best practices around a pilot and how you develop the internal business case?
So another good question. Yeah, so a lot of people come to us with a hypothesis, but all that hypothesis is someone in their company complained about something, or I've been in this industry for 30 years and I know this is a problem and I want to try to solve it. But what really helps us understand whether we can help you is to go through and actually try to refine that hypothesis a little bit. So if it's a loss prevention use case, how many things do I think I'm losing per year? What is the cost of the thing that I'm losing? Am I typically losing something after year 1 or year 3 or year 5 of its life? Or is it, hey, I'm losing it after a customer's unhappy with it because it's a 10-year-old piece of equipment that breaks down? These sorts of things. That's really helpful for us to understand. Or if it's an equipment utilization use case, hey, the typical runtime of my device is X many hours a week. If it was optimal, it would be Y many hours per week. How do I help get it to that? So those sort of hypotheses where you actually have defined benchmarks really help us for telling you early on whether or not we think we can help you. And like I said, if we don't think we can solve your use case, we're going to tell you right away. And that's going to save you time to focus on whatever your job is.
Great. One final question, what do these tags cost?
So that's a question that varies with volume pretty significantly, but MSRP for tag, for the Super Tag Pro, just be considered, around $50 for activation and $10 a month all in. So that's everything, including the hardware, the platform, the cellular connection, the firmware over the air, the configuration management, all the reporting and alerts. So we don't try to nickel and dime you. We're not going to be, charging you, an extra fee if you go over in your cellular. Like we're able to control a lot of these because we own the whole system. And so it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. It's a flat fee. Obviously, as volume goes up, those prices can come down significantly. So please reach out to us. One of our account execs can walk you through the various costs at different scale points. And again, we're pretty confident that we have one of the best values on the market for this sort of device. So please don't hesitate to reach out to one of our account reps if you have any questions.
Great. That's all we have for now. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us through our website at www.link-labs.com, or you can reach us at sales@link-labs.com, and we're happy to talk to you and provide information about your specific use case. Glenn, thanks for working with us today.
Thank you, Jennifer.